Welcome to another episode of the Credit Pearls podcast, and today we have John Murray from John Murray Headshots with us. Somebody who I have wanted to have on the podcast for a long time. He's so engaging in his social media podcasts and all of his social media videos. So John, thanks a million for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant.
I feel very privileged.
Oh, do you? Good.
Here on a whatever day of the week morning this is.
It was a slow start, but we got going. I'll tell you, the reason why I have the podcast is to really give some inspiration to other business owners from people that aren't American in Ireland, so that we can just explain what it is like to run a business and that we're normal people. So the structure of what we do today is you tell us a little bit about you, what you were like growing up, and then we talk about your business, how you've grown it, and all that interesting stuff.
Cool. Well,
right.
I hope it's interesting.
It is. It will be. Right, so tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, what you were like at school. What was Little John like?
Little John. I was a bit all over the place, I suppose. I grew up in the city centre in Dublin. I grew up in Pearse Street. My family are off from Ringsend, and so that Dublin 2, Dublin 4 area.
Okay.
Now Dublin 4, not D4. And yeah, I had a bit of a normal growing up, I suppose. I kind of think it was normal, and then you think of certain things. I was on stage with Michael Jackson in 1992 in Lansdowne Road for the Dangerous World Tour. Yeah, my school was really close to Lansdowne Road. They wanted kids to come on and sing Heal the World, and I got to hold a girl's hand going across the stage. Delighted with myself. Yeah, I think that was the exact moment the hormones kicked in. But things like that happened to me, and I think my family are quite creative. My dad worked in RTE for years and worked in theatre and stuff like that for years, and we were kind of given the opportunities to be creative rather than just fit what everybody else was doing. It wasn't just football or Gaelic football or hurling or those sort of things. It was a bit of, we were open to music and we were open to all of that sort of stuff. That was always around us, you know.
Okay, so different, like that's different from a lot of people.
Yeah, like I was 10, I was in the Dublin concert band playing the clarinet. You know, it was exactly what everybody else in Pearse Street was doing. It was, we were just kind of like that as a family. We were, my dad was into art and that sort of stuff. So it was we were always surrounded by that sort of thing and those sort of people. Friends of my dad who'd be creatives and in bands and things like that. We were always kind of around that. And then as I grew up, I'm not sure if you heard me talk on another podcast, but I fell a load of times and smashed my face in because I'm a boy. Stuff happens, right? So when I was about 8, I knocked my teeth out, my front teeth, and my mum held them in with a sponge with milk on it and took me up to Holles Street Hospital. No, Harcourt Street Hospital, not Holles Street. She's not trying to take me back. It's a maternity hospital for anybody who doesn't know. But Harcourt Street Hospital is not even a hospital anymore. It's an office block, but that shows my age. But I ended up with a brace across the front of my teeth that looked like wet bread. And that did great things for my confidence when I went to school and all the other kids were looking at me. And as I got older, I had a root canal on one of my teeth. So my teeth went brown on the front, and that combined with this brace that looked like wet bread. So I had a few issues around self-image and self-confidence as I was growing up. Hated school, hated it because I was bullied through school, and yeah, it was just a combination of a lot of different things. I just didn't like myself as a teenager. I had great friends. I still have the same friends. We're still very close. But I just think I suffered a lot with self-confidence growing up. And then when I left school, I think I pulled a bit of a Robin Williams. You know, he talks about this thing of putting on characters or becoming something else. Yeah. Trying to impress everybody or have somebody like people like you. I think I did that for quite a long time. And then, yeah, that's kind of where I was when I was young. But
and so when you were young, you were probably more creative than academic, or were you academic? Was it you didn't like school because of the social aspects of it, or because the academics was just not your jam?
No, the academics, like I like learning, I love learning. My brain wants more information. I think I was a bit bored in school. Okay. Especially in secondary school, because it's kind of that thing with teenagers. There's always somebody in the class who's funny and having a bit of a laugh, and the whole class can get swallowed by that. Yeah. And then you're not taking in new information, or I think unfortunately across the world, it's not just here, I think a lot of things like languages and things are taught completely wrong. They're taught through like memorization rather than through the way we learn. Like you could speak English before you went to school. Your parents weren't English language teachers. So we learn through osmosis by absorbing things like that. But we should be told, especially the way the Irish language is taught, like the Irish language is always taught through stories. We've always learned through stories. If somebody tells you a story, you're going to remember it. You watch a film, you remember the story, rather than remember individual parts of it or facts about it. And I think I'd have learned better if we were taught a lot more stories rather than just facts about history or facts about this or facts about geography, you know. But I think for me, the learning experience is about a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
And then on top of that, I hated school because I was bullied, which I didn't want to go in the first place. So it was all kind of snowball
And
effect.
did you go to college when you left school? Or?
Yeah, went off and I did finance for a bit. And that was just not for me.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things. Like I went back and studied a good bit since. So I've gone back and done a lot of courses, some distance learning courses, and I do any kind of course I can. I've even been training with a guy named Joseph McGuire for 4 years, on and off. He's a physiognomist, so a facial profiler and a body language expert.
Yeah, I know. So interesting. This.
Yeah,
Can't wait till we get on to that topic.
Yeah. So, like anything, I kind of focus my attentions or I focus my learning on. I think I'm a bit. I know I said it earlier. I don't have a hamster on the wheel in my head. I have a meerkat, so it's like I see anything flashy or funny, and I'm like my head just bobbing around. And it grabs my attention, and if it grabs my attention for long enough, I'll do a bit of study into it and I'll do a bit of reading or whatever. And
what I was so interested in, so you moved down into photography. So how did that transition, where did that come from? Was it always something you were interested in?
No. Probably around 2004, 2005, even probably earlier than that, I had an ex-girlfriend. She wasn't an ex at the time.
Okay.
She was a girlfriend at the time. And she had a camera, and we were always... Anywhere we go, she'd have the camera with her, and we'd be taking photographs of every log with snow on it and Malahide Castle and things, and just thought it was kind of cool. And she bought me tickets for a comedian called Larry the Cable Guy. He does the voice of Mater in Cars, the tow truck.
Oh, okay.
His comedy is not very child friendly, but you know, that's where my brain lives. And he had cancelled his show here, and she got a refund through Ticketmaster and felt guilty because it was a birthday present. And she bought me a camera out of the money that she had gotten back. So we broke up not long after that, and it ended up sitting in a drawer for a while. And then a neighbour of mine was a photographer. He used to shoot a lot of event work, and it looked cool, you know, standing in front of stages taking photographs of bands. I was like, I'll subscribe to that.
I'm doing this.
Yeah, so I took the camera out and he was going to show me how to use it. I learned a bit. And then my mum loves to talk up her kids, you know. My son can do that. You know, I had a big black camera. It looked professional. He can do that, you know. So I ended up photographing neighbours' kids and pets and dogs and even weddings. She volunteered me to photograph a wedding. So I did that, and I kind of realised that if I was funny, the photographs were good. If I just messed around with people and had fun, it wasn't about getting them to pose or anything like that.
Okay.
It was more about just having a bit of fun and taking photographs along the way. And the business kind of developed out of that. It's quite organic. I don't really chase goals or anything like that. I just do whatever feels good or whatever I want, and then just stuff comes from it. And that's how the business kind of ended up being a business.
Okay.
Kind of ended up shooting more weddings, and then that developed into people referring me to somebody else who's having their wedding, and that developed into me photographing behind the scenes at music videos and doing portrait work. And then I was an ambassador for Canon for 3 years, and that gave other opportunities, and it just kind of snowballed. And then when I trained with Peter Hurley in 2014, my focus, I suppose, as a photographer, using focus is a terrible way to reference anything. But yeah, my focus shifted towards standing really, really close to people, shooting headshots, and doing it for whatever was going on inside their heads and how they were on the outside.
Because this is something that I think, I was thinking about it over the last couple of weeks, because I knew you were coming on, and I was like, is it that you see people, they're most vulnerable? So we could be here chatting away, you take out a camera, and every insecurity that I have in my head, in my mind, starts thinking, what am I going to look like? Will I look fat? Will I look old? Is my makeup? Did you see that in people and recognise people get really insecure when a camera comes out? They're very vulnerable.
Well, I was like that my whole teenage life, you know, into my 20s. So I know what it feels like. And yeah, like every single time I took I was terrified to photograph people at the start. Absolutely petrified, because every time I took a camera out, people would tell me they look fat, old, ugly, they hated their face, I hate my nose, I look like Shrek. You know, all of that sort of stuff was always happening, and I felt that was my responsibility, like I had caused that. And it was when I met Peter, we were having a conversation, and I said to him, there's a whole thing with the mirror. We think we look like the person in the mirror. You don't. It's back to front.
Okay.
Very simply. So when you see a photograph, it's the wrong way around, and your brain wants to figure out why you don't look like that. But we were having this conversation with Peter, and I said to him, do you ever get somebody who just looks at a photograph and says, that doesn't look like me? And then you flip it horizontally and you give it back to them, and they're delighted with themselves because now it looks like them in the mirror. And he was horrified. He said, never do that. Educate them. And that was a big driver for me, because I understood why they felt uncomfortable. And I used to just say to people, you're not supposed to like yourself anyway. Like, that just makes you vain. Right. But it was only afterwards I kind of realised that vanity is really, it's a manifestation of kind of negative residual self-image or self-esteem, that they have low self-esteem and then they're masking it or peacocking. But yeah, it was a thing of educate people, and now I spend more time talking, believe it or not, than I actually do taking photographs. Because
that's what I was intrigued when I looked at the website. It was like, it's kind of not John Murray headshots. It's like so much more than that. Like, there's a whole thing going on around you're speaking at events, wellness events, and educating people around that. And that's probably the driver from your childhood where you didn't feel great about yourself.
Yeah, there's a whole combination of a lot of different things. There's a constant want within me somewhere to do better for other people and to help other people. Joseph Maguire, the profiler, calls my hairline protector of man. And when he was talking about it, I was thinking my dad, heavily involved in unions. My brother is an employment law barrister. You know, you think of generations back.
What's the hairline thing?
This kind of crest here. There's a whole thing with facial profiling that they look at every individual part of your face. They look at the length of different sections of your face. They look for kind of evolutionary things in your face. Like if you look at somebody from North Scandinavia, they'll all have long, narrow noses because it's very, very harsh conditions up there. But what they need to do is warm air before it goes into their lungs. So by passing the capillaries in a long passageway up their nose to keep their core body temperature higher. But if you look at somebody from Nigeria or Ghana, they have very short noses with very large nasal bores because the air is very dry and they don't want it to touch the capillaries on the inside of the nose before it goes into the lungs because it would dehydrate them. So every fat deposit, every movement of your face, every kind of muscle, it all says something different. But it tells us about the genetic evolution of you and how you process information and stuff and your preferences and just basically everything about you is written all over your face. All by
face?
Yeah, all by your face.
Wow.
And now I'm staring at you.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so like all of that, like people deserve to know what they look like and they deserve to feel better about themselves. But like, the technology is always wrong. Even when we see ourselves on camera, it's wrong.
And is it worse in men or women or equal?
Equal. I have a blog post on my website, I'm not sure if you saw it. It says, I make people cry for a living and I love it. I don't know, it's a bit of a sadist in me. But it's people coming in who are so uncomfortable standing in front of the camera because every time we do, so your brain doesn't know the difference between actually happening and only thinking about it. You're going for an interview, you're stressed out, like proper stressed out. Your brain is already living in that moment. It hasn't even happened yet. You're still driving there.
Yeah.
You know, then that's the whole thing with it, is that you're fully engaged with that process. Your brain is already living that because we have visual memory. You know, you have auditory memory. If you sing happy birthday to yourself in your head, your brain is hearing it as if you're actually singing it out loud. Or if you imagine opening the door of your fridge, you know, and seeing the light come on, your brain is actually physically seeing that in the same way that you would if you opened the door of the fridge. So our brains are capable of that, unless you've got a thing called aphantasia, which is a whole other conversation. But we have the ability to do that and our brains do that. So then the idea of even having your photograph taken makes you feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're expected to see that one thing in your face you don't like that's in every single photograph that you blame on making you feel uncomfortable. You're expected to see that, and your brain is already in that moment where you're seeing it and making you feel uncomfortable. And that's why people feel uncomfortable looking at themselves.
And does everybody go to the one thing that they don't like the minute they look at the photograph?
No, it's different in everybody. Some people say, I have an eye difference, or some people are like, I look like I'm having a stroke. Yeah, but I mean the
insecurity that they have. So I'll look for the one thing I don't like about me the minute I see the photograph.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Because what you're expected to see is you in the mirror. And then it's the wrong way around. So when you look at the image, your brain is saying, that doesn't look like me. I should look like the person in the mirror. I need to find out what's wrong. Because this front part of your brain here is called the prefrontal cortex, and that's a problem-solving part of the brain. And that's looking for that one thing on your face that you don't like. But it's not looking for that. It's looking for a reason you don't look like you in the mirror. And then you see this thing and you go, that's it there. That has to be that. It's like there's a bear in the Toblerone logo, or there's an arrow in the FedEx logo. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you go looking for it every single time. But if you have a candid photograph that was taken at a party or something, and you're in full flow of yourself, and the photograph was taken, it's usually the one you go, oh, using that as Facebook profile picture, you know. You don't go looking in that photograph for the thing that's on your face that you don't like. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
And in a lot of cases, it doesn't exist. Like, some people come into the studio, they stand in front of the camera, and you say, like, right, do whatever you think you should do, and then they do social smiles. Like, we've 16,384 different musculature variations in our faces. We do 35 facial expressions every day, and 19 of them are smiles. And one of them is a dominant smile. It's this here. It's the Joey O-Friend smile.
Yeah.
So you squeeze one eye and you pull one side of your mouth. And it's what salespeople do a lot. Doctors will do it, parents do it to kids, and they tell them it's okay. You're like, it's okay. You know, because you're taking control and taking charge. Not just in a really kind of pushy, salesy thing. We do it because it's just part of our behaviours, and we've always done it. So when we need to take control or let somebody know that we're there to comfort them or we're in charge, we do it on one side of the face. You do it on the right side when you're doing it externally to somebody else, and we do it on the left when we're trying to convince ourselves of something, or when you realise it.
No way, really?
We do it on the left for ourselves, yeah. So when you do that, people come into the studio all the time, I look like I'm having a stroke, you know, because they're pulling on this side of their face. So this side is not doing anything, and this eye is not doing anything, but you're squeezing this eye and you're pulling on this side of your mouth. So it's always going to look asymmetrical. But when you see when people see themselves then in a full, genuine, reactive expression, like that's happening not because they're thinking of smiling. It's not there anymore. Or they don't even think of looking for it because it doesn't actually exist.
Okay.
We all have stuff that we don't like.
Okay. So if we're thinking about the world that we live in, selfies, social media, filters.
Yeah.
So we're living in a world and we're looking at a face that isn't ours. So then when you take a photograph of somebody, I'm used to seeing myself filtered and back the front because my camera is showing me the mirror version of me.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. So when you go on to, like Instagram, TikToks, Snapchat, all these things, people call UX designers or user experience designers. They want you to use that app. The more you use that app, the more the company gets paid, essentially. So what they do is they do everything in their power to make you want to use it more. So as flattering as possible, flip it the opposite direction, give you a jawline, make sure that your jawline is strong. And the way they do that is because the lens is 24 millimeters wide. So like a landscape photographer's lens, it's quite wide, you can see a lot. But what happens is it's kind of like looking in one of those mirrors that people use driving out of their driveways, you know, the concave mirrors. Yeah. So when you come up close to that, it's like looking at the back of a spoon. The nose is really, really big. So the nose is massive, and then it's in favour of giving a jawline and making sure the ears look small on the side of the head. So the face kind of warps out. And selfies are actually the leading cause of rhinoplasty in the States at the moment. People getting nose jobs because they think their nose is massively overblown, in favour of giving them a jawline. I actually, in some of the slides and some of the talks I do, I have a photograph taken at 24 millimeters, so different zoom levels on the lenses. So 24, one at 70 millimeters, which is kind of, if you're short-sighted, it's kind of what we see. And then at 100 millimeters, which is close enough to what the human eye sees. Same guy standing in the same spot doing the exact same thing, and then the three images, and you can see how vastly different they are, and it's crazy.
Oh my God,
so everything we see through technology is wrong. The mirror is wrong. Mirror's only 180 years old. Cameras are 200 years old. But the only way we should be able to see ourselves is in a ripple puddle outside a cave, because we've had eyeballs for 90 million years, and that's how we do it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. But it's so interesting because I think that is that what led you to then delve more into the information around this. Why do people not like themselves? How can we help them? How can we help them improve that? How do we help people improve their self-image? And is social media ruining it for everybody?
Yeah, it is kind of the things that led me down that path. It's kind of finding out more information about it constantly and then kind of applying it to what I do. Like even when I met Joseph for the first time, that was the same thing. It was like some of the information he was giving was like, this is mind blowing. I know some of this stuff already, or it's kind of in there somewhere. And then it was bringing it to the front. And now I use it when I kind of talking to clients in the studio, when I'm doing any kind of big talks or anything like that. And you can educate people around it. And then, but just to say, this is the truth. You know, social media is wrong. The camera in your phone is wrong. The camera that you're using, when you use any camera, it's wrong. Everything is always wrong. All of the technology is always wrong all of the time. There's no way around that.
So can we ever see ourselves how we really are?
Yeah, but you have to do weird things.
Okay.
You know, because the camera only has one lens and one sensor, it only sees 2 dimensions. We see 3 dimensions because we've got our eyes are slightly offset. So when people come into the studio, I get them to lean back and then they have to push your face forwards like this and do all sorts of mad stuff to make them look normal to the camera. And then we have to use tons of lights and all sorts of stuff as well.
Okay, and that helps them. So most people then, but do you make that part of your story now when you bring somebody into the studio to talk to them first?
Every single person, yeah. So we bring them in, they stand in front of the lights, they do whatever they think, and then we bring them out, stand them in front of the screen, and we talk about what we're doing and why we're making changes and the movements and stuff like that. And why we're correcting things to counteract again the failures in the technology. And then they start to see themselves in their true shape. Like they're not as heavy as they thought they were. They're not as, you know, things aren't as kind of distorted as they thought they were. And all of that sort of stuff then starts to make sense. And then they think they need to walk down South William Street after they leave the studio with their heads out like this.
Walking along. And listen, I know we spoke before the camera started about when you started your business and the hours that you were working and the impact that had on you physically.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I looked like a Roman emperor going around for a while, a little Buddha baby. I just wanted to justify the business. And I felt...
had you been in a job that you left?
Yeah, I did. And then I was already taking photographs. I already had the photography business. And I was doing both. And then I took the business on its own. I was trying to really drive the business on its own. So I was starting to work 100 hours a week, or close enough to it. And I was leaving the studio, which is on South William Street, which is close to every amazing food shop around the whole of Dublin too. I was buying sandwiches, going to Pablo Picante's and getting burritos. There's nothing wrong with the burritos, just don't have 2 of them every day and then go home and have dinner. Then I talk at a lot of events and there's always wine and food and stuff. So you end up eating and then going home after a skinful of drink with socialising, and then you're starving again. And I went from 80 kilos to close on to 120 kilos in about a year and a half. And I was getting married in 2018. And I kind of knew things were a problem when my mom kept telling me you have to wear a waist jacket. I was like, I'm getting married in the south of Italy in September. It's going to be roasting. I'm not wearing a waistcoat. You have to wear a waistcoat. And eventually she said to me, you have to wear a waistcoat. You've got a belly. I was like, okay. And then I saw photographs of myself and I thought, right, this needs to change. But yeah, I was overdoing it.
Was it stress or just everything?
It was just, the whole lot was unhealthy. You know, nobody needs to work 100 hours a week. What's the point when, like, you're supposed to be living your life? You can't just be working. You know, a lot of people work to get the money to live their life.
Yeah.
And then they don't live their life because all they're doing is working. You know, all they're doing is being focused on success and stuff like that. But success doesn't just mean that. You know, it doesn't mean having loads of money in the bank, or, I don't know, there's an old quote, there's the measure of, I think it's Margaret Fishback Powers or something. The measure of a man is not the amount of money he has in his bank account, the car he drives or the clothes he wears. It's how he's remembered in the memory of a small child. You know, so it's about the connection we have to humans rather than things. I think that's a mistake that people make, is trying to have things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just realised that it was unhealthy, and I'd seen a photograph of myself talking at an event and I went, where did that come from?
Who's he?
Yeah, who's he? Who's the fat lad that was doing the talk instead of me? And then I just realised I need to start cutting back and I need to start doing things for me. So I cut back to 3 days a week. And then the other time I'm learning to speak Chinese at the moment because it's hilarious. Like when this boys GoPro accessories in Chinese off somebody Chinese and their brains just won't accept it. It's just funny, you know, or we get people in the studio the same, and like I like languages and things, so I like to have a bit of fun with people. But I learned that on my days off, and I kayak a lot. Bore people to tears. I'm like the vegan of kayaking. All I do is talk about kayaking. It's like, how do you know if somebody's a vegan or a kayaker? They talk about it all the time. They told you. But that stuff is...
But how did you manage the financial... So I'm thinking of me, say. So in my business, I do work a lot of hours. I don't do 40 hours a week. I do a lot more. Did you have to take a drop financially, or did you just make up the difference and it just...
I make more now than I ever did.
Okay.
Ever. And I'm working 3 days a week. But it's not... I didn't just suddenly go, right, I'm not working 100 hours a week anymore, so I need to triple my prices to, you know, make up the difference. It's not... My business is developing anyway, and the way I was doing my business was changing.
Okay.
You know, the talks and stuff like that. I'm doing a lot of on-sites for clients. So instead of having individual people come into the studio and shooting 10 people in a day, that just... mentally, that's exhausting. Because you're looking at micro changes in light, you're looking at different changes in people's faces, micro expressions, you're trying to judge every tiny little movement. And it is physically exhausting. And I just went, all of that needs to stop, and I need to start doing things for me. And then as I was doing things for me, I was enjoying the business more, I was enjoying what I was doing more. And then it's like a Pied Piper effect, you know, because I'm so engaged with it and I'm so in love with what I'm doing that everybody who sees it gets kind of more drawn in.
Okay.
And then like, I just get booked out, and then I cancel the extra days in the week. They still exist. I just don't do anything on them.
You just do what you want then. But that's fed into you loving what you do, being more productive, being better at what you do, and then being able to charge more.
And then that's like, and people come in and they know that I'm enjoying it more when they walk in the door. It's like some businesses, like I know retail, I know a few people working in retail, and one big supermarket chain, I won't name them, but they let go of a ton of staff, and now the managers are all going around like headless chickens because they have a ton of work on, but there's only half the managers or a quarter of the managers there. The staff on the floor were all let go, so there's less staff on the floor as well. So the stuff is not making it to the floor. The staff have more work to physically do. They're all going around stressed, and the managers are going around stressed. The customers are coming in, and then they're feeding off that as well, because that's what empathy is. It's feeling what other people are feeling. So you walk into a shop and the staff are all stressed out. You know that they're stressed out. It's not a comfortable place to be. So you don't want to be engaged in that, and then just go somewhere else.
So it's the exact same for when you were doing your 100 hours a week, stressed, not healthy, not doing anything for yourself. Then people just weren't having the same experience.
They were, but I was burning myself out. Okay. And I'm sure there was some sort of a lack there. There would have been some degree of disconnect because, you know, I was faking it a bit. I was kind of pushing myself beyond where I needed to be, and I was tired. At the end of the day, be exhausted. And thinking back, I can probably relate to it in a way of noticing things where I'd be exhausted and I'm really, really pushing and trying to get beyond that to make the experience great for people coming in the door. Yeah. But I didn't need to be doing that. I was just tiring myself out and I was burning myself out.
So for somebody, what advice would you give to somebody like who's in that same position? And it might not be the same business, but similar. What did you do? Was it just a photograph and then you took I need to calibrate everything here, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing, or was it a very slow process?
No, I knew, and I knew for a long time. And then it was a combination of seeing that photograph of myself, and I'm sure it was a couple of other things. I can't really think of them now, but I'm sure there was a combination of a few things that I was, I'm great at this, kind of do as I say, not as I do.
Right, okay.
And giving other people advice is great because it's tailored to them.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really apply to you. But it was eventually I realised, I think it was probably the photograph.
Yeah,
was
that was the moment that you
yeah,
said,
the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, enough.
And I just went, right, that's it. And actually I fired a load of my clients in 2017. Makeup academies, beauty industry people, model agencies, that sort of stuff. And that was, a lot of the interactions with them are quite toxic.
Okay.
You know, I'll send you in 30 heads a month, and there was a little bit of a kickback towards them, and you're kind of doing things for them. And there's a makeup academy as well I was doing a lot of work for. She was asking me to go to India to work with acid attack victims, and that turned into a whole thing where she was looking for me to go to India for a month for free because she was a charity, which she wasn't actually registered as a charity. And I was like, well, it's going to cost me a fortune to go. And if I want to go to India and photograph acid attack victims for free on my own money, then I will. But I'm not going to do it and then give you the images for nothing.
No, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a charity.
Yeah, I'm not a charity. When I close those doors, the doors are closed, and I'm not earning any money for a couple of months because of the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes afterwards and before.
Yeah.
So it's just no. And then I would just start calling people going, right, that's it. That relationship is now over. You can send people in if you want them, but
we're not doing what, that's the deal we had is off.
That's gone.
And you're in a much better position now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that same week, I was in LinkedIn for the first time. A lad I met at a stag party. One of my friends was like, tell him what you do, it's weird. And I told him, and we were steaming. You know, we'd been drinking all day. It was great. So God only knows what I told him or how big the story got because I was drunk. But yeah, I told him, and he said, would you come in and do some work with one of my teams? And I said, yeah, okay. I was like, oh, I'll do it for free, pal. You've only got 8 people. Yeah. I'll come in and I'll do it for free. And then it took a few weeks. It probably took 6 or 8 weeks to happen. And then he called me just before and said, by the way, my 8 people is now 32 people. Don't worry, I'm not expecting you to do it for free. I have a budget. But I've been explaining it to some of the other managers, and a few of them want to come down into the room and see the talk, if that's okay, before you actually go and photograph people. And I said, yeah, grand. And I walked in and the room was packed. There was people from all over the business, all over like LinkedIn everywhere. A lot of managers from all different teams and directors and global directors and stuff had all come down, and they all wanted to hear the talk. And I did one of my talks called Am I Ugly? Because there's 8.5 million YouTube videos at the moment of people asking the world are they ugly. Little kids, adults. And it's not all sad. There's a lot of funny stuff in the talk as well. So it kind of goes up and down. But I did a talk and everybody in the room was sitting there staring. And that part of the talk where I asked that question, am I ugly? The whole room just went silent. And there's people getting upset in the room and everything because it was such a big moment. And
Jesus.
I stood there and realised best thing I could have done was sack all of them this week. That was great.
Yeah. Everything just started to happen when you did the right thing and you were aligned with what you should have been doing, I think.
Yeah.
That's what you should have been doing all along.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the rest was just nonsense.
It's like that Simon Sinek golden circle thing, the why.
Yeah.
The why is the most important thing, and what and how you do it are just secondary to that. I only heard that last year, maybe the year before, but I've been doing it for years since that talk in LinkedIn in 2017. But yeah, it made a huge amount of sense. And then I was like, right, that's it.
No.
This is the way we're doing things now.
So this is 3 days a week, and then your talks are then throughout the rest of the week?
Yeah, so I can take things on when I want to, like on top of the 3 days a week. I was talking before Christmas actually at the Fingal Enterprise and Women's Network thing, and Barbara and Caroline were like, you do the whole, talk about your work-life balance. You have a great work-life balance. You're always out to kayak in the mornings and you go off and you do this sort of stuff. And you're only doing the 3 days a week. And I had to stand on the stage in front of 200 women and say, by the way, I'm leaving here to drive to Leeds. I got up at like 5 o'clock that morning. Yeah. I was like doing that. I was finishing that. I was driving to Dublin Port to get on a ferry to go to the UK, to pick up somebody in Wales, to drive to Leeds, to shoot for a full day for a company that maintains windmills or wind turbines. And then I had to drive back to Wales to drop Jodie off and then get back to Ireland. I was going to be awake for 48 hours.
So you're like,
it was me talking about
3 days,
balance.
but not really. But not really.
All in one go.
Yeah.
It was me talking about work-life balance and then me doing a 48-hour day. But yeah, it's having the freedom to do things like that every now and again, knowing that I'm not doing it all the time. I'm not going to burn myself out all the time.
Yeah. But then feeding your soul with the things that you love, the kayaking, and like, I'm sure the talks are very rewarding. And if you're loving the photographs, where you're explaining to people, it's just not the same as what you were doing when you were in that bad place.
It's the whole lot, yeah. Now I get to enjoy everything I do on some level. Like, I laugh my way through the day. Like, I tell people they look constipated and then take photographs of them where they're breaking their hearts laughing. Like, it's easy, you know. But it's not just they look constipated. I told somebody the other day, if you did that face for long enough in a hospital, they just turn you off. She just kept laughing, and I kept taking pictures before she was laughing.
Yeah, and I've seen some of her pictures. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing.
Yeah, people. Somebody I kayak with said it to me the other day. He said, "You feel connected to the people in the pictures." I was like, "You're a doctor. You don't understand empathy." I said, "It's a genuine expression."
Yeah.
So we move in the same way as the person that we're facing. I said, "That's all it is." I said, "I'm just hijacking their emotions."
But I think the whole understanding, your understanding of what people are going through and understanding their mind really helps, because a lot of photographers, I've had my photograph taken and I've hated them. But I know, because I look so nervous and I look so worried and I look so anxious, that it comes out in the photograph. It's when you're relaxed and you're calm and you're happy, or those photographs that are taken when I don't know. They're the best ones.
Yeah.
They are definitely the best ones.
That's all empathy is. Empathy is, I'm feeling what you're feeling. It comes from two Greek words, and pathos, which means I feel. And it's I'm feeling what you're feeling, because you're moving you're moving muscles. And then I'm moving the same muscles because of cells called mirror receptors inside of us. So we move the same muscles in the same way to release endorphins or hormones internally to feel the same as you, so that we can be socially appropriate. If you're with somebody who's happy, you're happy. If you're with somebody who's sad, you're sad.
Yeah.
You know, but that counts when we see photographs as well. Like the networking summit, when I went off on one about squishy things, like that's how we connect. We connect face to face, and we have done for 90 million years.
So it's more powerful than we think.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. I think it's amazing. It's fascinating. And what's next for you? What's your plan for the next few years? Have you got a plan? You were saying you don't really focus on goals. You don't really plan out what you're going to do. You just organically let it happen.
Yeah, I'm always telling people I'm like a leaf on a stream floating down, and I'll eventually end up somewhere.
Okay.
You know, whatever mood takes me, whatever stream takes me, I just end up wherever. So yeah, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep adding to it. You know, as things draw my attention, if I'm interested in something that comes up along the way around the neurology behind it, or the physiognomy thing, that was way out of left field. You know, I met him at a networking event, and everybody kept saying, "You do weird things, he does weird things with faces, you should meet." And we realised they're two completely different things, but they do cross over, or they have a good relationship together.
So probably more of that then.
That sort of things, yeah. Just anything that feels like it belongs, or I want to do, because people ask me to do things all the time, do talks, do podcast interviews, do whatever, and it just...
If it feels right, you go for it.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it's brilliant way to be. So think about you, your 20-year-old self. What would he think of you now?
Sap.
Really? No.
That's a good question. You kind of turned to the whole, what would you say to your 20-year-old self on your head? What would he think of me? I don't know. I think if my 20-year-old self could see me now, he'd say, "Where did that belly come from?" And I should probably... I would like to think that my 20-year-old self would look up to the person I am now.
Yeah.
And be happy with the person I am now, and then maybe start adopting some of the lessons that I teach others and teach myself now back then. And
would he be so wowed by, look where you are? Because that's not where you started when you were 20. Like, you were in finance.
I did. Finance was a college thing, and I hated it. You know, I was still working in pubs and everything back then. I was working in buskers in Temple Bar when I was 21. And I was spending a lot of my life trying to impress other people, you know. And I think, if I was 20 looking at myself now, I don't know whether I'd have connected with the person I am now, because I was so involved in myself, in my own little world, and out enjoying myself and the whole lot. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd have fully connected with the person I am now, but I would like to think that I would have been in some way impressed by the person I am now.
Yeah. And what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Stop trying to impress other people. This is all about, like, live your life for you, not for other people. They'll like you regardless.
Or they won't. And that's
or they
okay.
won't. Yeah, I'm not sure if you know Joe Dalton. I tell a story when I'm doing talks sometimes, and it's a combination of Joe Dalton and my friend Danny, who's a comedian, Danny O'Brien. Joe, I'd heard him speak at something on Dunleary, and he was talking about the people in the world. So there's 8 billion people in the world. 99.999% of those people, they don't care whether you live or die. They don't know you. They've never heard of you. You're not Bono. So they genuinely just don't care, because they have no reference for your existence. And then the other small percentage of people are a combination of people. Most of them will hang on every single word you say. They'll love you because of who you are. You're amazing. You're everything to them. And then there's a very, very small minority who just wish you go and stick your head in the microwave and piss off, because for some reason you and them just don't get on, whatever reason. But then Danny was talking at a thing, he was doing a thing, overcoming the fear of public speaking, now from a touring comedian who's done the 3 Arena, with, and he tours all over the world. And he was standing there and he said, you can be standing in front of Vicar Street in front of 1,000 people and everybody's laughing. And there's somebody in the front row who has a face on them like the smell of vinegar, and you're just staring at them.
Yeah.
And you do the whole show to them. And that's just the way we are. I suppose it's evolution. We try to problem solve. That's what your brain is trying to do, is problem solve. That's why we don't like ourselves in photographs. You're problem solving, you're finding that reason. But I think, yeah, if I'd have known back when I was 20 that most of the people in the world don't care, and then stop trying to impress the people who do, or who don't like you for whatever. Yeah, then I think I'd been far better off far earlier. Life
would have been easier.
Yeah. But then again, I don't know if we'd be doing this if I was far more balanced.
That's the thing. When you look back and you think, well, maybe that all of that journey made me who I am today.
Yeah, all of it made me who I am today. Everything. The feeling uncomfortable in school, the feeling uncomfortable in my teens, my early 20s, all of that, all combined, is things that have fed into me wanting to do better for other people, and me wanting to educate other people. And yeah. And
the empathy then, because you're able to understand how they felt.
Yeah, I was like that. I felt exactly the same way.
But I think everybody does. I mean, I do when I look. And like that, I was doing a talk last week and I looked at the whole room and everybody was engaged and laughing and smiling, except one person.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at her.
Yeah.
Why is she not enjoying this? What is it? What can I change? So it's so true.
Yeah.
So true. I would talk to you all day, but I'm conscious that we are here a long time. I love this talk. If you were to give advice for somebody starting in business tomorrow, what advice would you give them?
This is a good one. And this, funnily, has been inspired by something somebody asked me on Twitter this morning in a private message that I met. I kind of know them a while, and I met them at something 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were only talking about this earlier as well. These kind of LinkedIn messages, behind the scenes LinkedIn messages, the list of everything you've ever done since school. People forget in their businesses that personal brand is more important than anything else. People buy from people. Let people connect with you on a human level. Like, completely on a human level. Forget the business and what you do. If people connect with you, they'll want to do better for you.
Yeah.
If you connect with people on a human level, make friends with people, that's, like, I do these things on a Monday called LinkedIn Lattes, and I made it up. You sitting having a coffee with somebody and then not talking about business or anything, like there's no business cards, none of that. Just go and have a coffee with somebody at lunchtime, and then you leave and they feel a little bit used. They're like, was that supposed to lead to business or a referral? But they don't, they just leave, and then that's it. But then you're connected to them on a human level, and then they want to send people your way, and you want to send people their way, because that's just how we've always done it.
Overly forced, so like grow your network, but grow it like genuinely. Yeah. Not always looking for the business. What can you do for me? What can I get out of this?
100%. So understand that, like, again, that thing of not everybody's going to like you. Who cares? Like, a lot of the stuff that I say on my LinkedIn, nobody else would bother or dare use that sort of language on LinkedIn, or talk about the mad stuff that I talk about. But I do it because it's what's in my head, and that's what people connect to, and that's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah, because I was looking at them, and every time I see it on LinkedIn, I say, "What's madness is he going to go out with today?" I listen, and I watch the videos because I enjoy it.
It's just like, if you're just yourself, and I think just is a horrible word to put in there because it kind of diminishes it. But there's 8 billion people on the planet, and the one thing that makes you different is being yourself. And if you're yourself, then everybody engages with it because everybody's happy to be just like you. Gaz that I did the cookbook for, and Rick, the butcher. I remember a guy coming into the studio after we'd done the cookbook, and he had bought the book and then came in and he said, I follow you on Instagram, I follow you on Twitter as well, and I really follow Gaz. I said, I'm really into Gaz. I love Gaz because Gaz is an amazing chef with 3 restaurants. But on a Monday or a Tuesday, he's drinking pints and eating snack boxes. So you don't feel guilty for having junk food.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at this professional chef who has these 3 restaurants and everybody follows on a award-winning cookbook. But at the same time, he's eating snack boxes at 12 o'clock or McDonald's at 11 o'clock on a Monday morning and drinking a pint because he can. And he said you feel a little bit more connected to him on a human level.
Yeah.
And that's all what it's about. Let them connect with you on a human level, and then the business will come itself.
Yeah. And if you're looking to grow your business, or maybe not grow your business, maybe just, I think this is where some people are so focused. It's like really thinking about what success looks like for you. Because sometimes I can be focused on growing the business, and I ask people this all the time, but maybe some people need to just take a step back and say, what do I actually want? Is it to grow the business, or is it to have a life I love?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it should, maybe that's where we need to be focused. I suppose if you learned something, that's probably what it was.
Yeah. If you love your life, then that is a success.
Yeah.
And whatever you're doing for a living is going to be a success too, because you're just doing it because it's part of your existence and your journey, rather than trying to justify your whole life by that one thing.
Yeah, and then your life, there is no work-life balance. It's all life.
Yeah, it's all work and then no life.
Yeah, but for you, you have life.
Yeah.
It's like your work is your life is your work, and it's all kind of...
And the work has fit itself around the life that I have.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Rather than me fitting my life around my work.
Yeah, and looking for your 2 weeks off on a...
So if anybody wants headshots done at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm your man, because I'm doing other stuff during the day.
Where can people find you? Where's the place to connect with you? I found you on LinkedIn, so that's where I connected with you originally. Well, I connected with you at the networking event and then on LinkedIn. So if people want to reach out, maybe have a chat, have the Monday lattes, LinkedIn lattes.
The LinkedIn lattes on a Monday.
Yeah.
The least creepy place you can find me is on John Murray Headshots. Excuse me.
That was real.
That's going to stay in.
That's authentic.
John doesn't make mistakes in videos, so we leave it in. The least creepy place is johnmurrayheadshots.com, or my studio is on South William Street, just up the road from Grogan's.
Okay. But people can't just arrive at the studio and say...
it's by booking only.
Yeah,
because
okay.
chances are I'm not going to be there. The studio's rented out, and I'm bumming water somewhere. But... yeah, johnmurrayheadshots.com is just the easiest place, because all my social links are all on the bottom of the thing there, and then they can click through, they can send me messages, they can, I don't know. And
have you any upcoming events that we could go and see you live?
I'm not allowed to handle my diary for this very reason.
Okay. But look at your website, it'll be all there.
Go onto my website and it's there, and then I'm constantly announcing stuff on my Instagram and on my Twitter and my LinkedIn as well.
Okay, super. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks
for
a million.